This video is brought to you by War Thunder.
Where do you want to go today? Well, thanks to the internet, you can go anywhere you want. And in the 90s, there were a few ways of doing it. One company was quickly becoming the standard for online surfing: America Online, most popularly known as AOL. With just a computer, a phone line, and a modem, you could dial in and eventually connect with millions of other people and virtually endless possibility. News, search, games, chat rooms. It was a prodigy, just like Prodigy. But AOL was the future. It was the 90s. But it would only take a few years for it to all come tumbling down. For reasons that are cultural, technological, and economic, America Online's firm grasp on this new digital market waned, where it ultimately became just a shadow of its former self. AOL serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of hubris and short-term thinking, and also serves as a time capsule of the distant past. So what happened? What was it specifically that took down arguably one of the most powerful companies in the 90s? Now, it might sound a bit brazen to say this about America Online, but that's because the company's influence did eventually start branching out internationally. It wasn't as prevalent in these areas, but it certainly did exist. In fact, AOL's presence in America wasn't even that commonplace until around 10 years after it formed. Its story begins in the mid-1980s, and one of the most popular personal computers at this time was a little thing called the Commodore 64. Now, I've talked about the Commodore 64 in the past, but what made it so successful was its affordability and great hardware. Therefore, this meant that more people were using the Commodore, and more software was being made for the Commodore, and this software was more capable than ever before. This created ample opportunity for developers to make some very creative programs for the platform. Well, something called packet switching had been a proof of concept for a little over a decade at this point. The idea that you could send data from one machine to another by breaking that data down into tiny pieces and reassembling it on the other side, typically over a phone line. It was just like talking on the telephone, but instead of phones, you had computers, which were on the line. So what if you combined the advanced capabilities of the Commodore with packet switching to make online communication exciting? Well, a company called GameLine was doing just that. The idea was that you could download video games to your computer through this dial-up connection. Think of it as an early version of Steam, incredibly ahead of its time. Maybe a little too ahead?
Boy, it sure feels swell to come out here and do some sightseeing. That's funny. That plane's dusting crops where there ain't no crops. It's dangerous out there. Why not defend yourself within the comfort of your own home? War Thunder is just the way to do that. It is the most comprehensive video combat game ever made. Available for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and mobile. Take that, Soviets! You can command over 2,500 tanks, helicopters, and ships. These range from biplanes and armored cars of the 1920s to today's fighter jets and main battle tanks, spanning over 10 major nations. And you don't even need extra hardware to do it. Just a mouse and keyboard or controller. You're just cruising for a bruisin'. War Thunder features incredibly detailed vehicles and realistic graphics that include authentic sound effects, putting you right in the middle of the most powerful war machines throughout history. Wow, it's like a mare! Everyone likes their gaming experience differently, which is why War Thunder offers 3 gaming modes: Arcade for those who like fast-paced matches, Simulator for those who want a more challenging experience, and Realistic mode for those who want a balance between intensity and authenticity. It's just so fun. My personal favorite feature is the in-depth customization information. You can add all kinds of designs to your vehicle, ranging from camouflages to historical markings.
Looking cool, Daddy-O.
So join over 70 million players in the breathtaking experience of War Thunder, with abundance of high-quality content to explore. There's no other game like it. If you use my link in the description or pinned comment, you can play War Thunder for free. For a limited time, new and returning players on PC and console that haven't played in the last 6 months will receive a massive bonus pack of multiple premium vehicles, Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of a premium account. Now that is swell.
Check it out. It's gonna be a gas, kitten.
Obviously, network speeds were incredibly slow in the 1980s, so these games would often take forever to download. Not to mention, you could only rent these games, not buy them. So GameLine couldn't find its target audience, and it eventually failed. But the company's marketing director, Steve Case, wasn't quick to giving up. Instead, he rebranded the company's name to Quantum Computer Services, with its new service called Quantum Link. Rather than just focusing on gaming, Q-Link also capitalized on other mediums of online communication, like chat, email, file sharing, and something called a bulletin board, not too different from the web forums that we recognize today. It even sported this fun-looking interface, which, in an era where the computer was just finally exiting the command line environment, this was quite advanced. If you've seen the show *Halt and Catch Fire*, you probably notice right away that the fictional company Mutiny is loosely based off this, as well as Playnet. Q-Link was quite a success, garnering almost 500,000 users by 1988. They eventually extended its service to other platforms like the Apple II and IBM-compatible PCs, and now Q-Link was compatible with most of the PCs that were used at this time. It was no longer just connecting Commodores. By 1991, it was connecting pretty much everyone in America that had a computer. Steve Case felt that rebranding the company's name to America Online would reflect this sentiment well. During all this, another online system would enter the scene and start gaining recognition: the World Wide Web. Now, I've talked about this many times on the channel before, but as a quick refresher, the World Wide Web and the internet are not the same thing, even though we often use those terms synonymously. The internet is the actual network infrastructure that allows for computers to talk to each other. The World Wide Web is one of many information systems that runs on top of the internet that makes this communication easy to understand. Services like AOL, Prodigy, and CompuServe are on the internet, but they are not on the World Wide Web. Instead, they operate as something called a walled garden. This means that these programs were basically running their own version of the internet. So if you were using America Online, you couldn't just go and access the services that were on CompuServe. That was only for people who were on CompuServe. It would be kind of like trying to access the Apple App Store through the Xbox dashboard. They are both connected to the internet, but they are different things. Now you might be thinking, why on earth would someone pay to only access a portion of the internet, like AOL, instead of, the entire World Wide Web? Keep in mind that the internet was still quite new in the early 90s, at least in a commercial context. Only a fraction of the public was using it. So of course, they had to make the internet easy to use so that more people would be comfortable using it. Online service providers with walled gardens like AOL were meant to do that. By locking everything down, AOL can essentially curate all the best services and tools that users can access to navigate the internet. When you bought the AOL service, you would install the AOL program to your computer. Then you would plug in your modem, which was connected to the phone line, dial in, and once you opened the program up, you were online. You wouldn't type in a .com in an address bar at the top. It was quite literally just a more modernized version of the Q-Link Mutiny setup. You could access the news, entertainment, chat rooms, travel, kids entertainment, all kinds of stuff. But it was still AOL. Rather than typing in a website name or browsing a search engine, you would type in keywords related to the thing you were looking for. For example, if you wanted to access Nickelodeon on AOL, you wouldn't type in nick.com. You would just type in Nick, and it would take you to AOL's version of the Nick page, which was different from a website. If you're still a bit confused, Clarissa can explain it all to you. In fact, if you saw a lot of internet commercials at this time, they would list out both the website address and the keyword to search for it on AOL.
Nick.com's exploding with amazing stuff all on America Online. Go to AOL keyword Nick. It's easy.
There was an entire list of AOL keywords to help you find your way around. A bit of a random side note, apparently some of this list is now lost media, which I think is just interesting. But in short, this allowed for AOL to create a centralized, simplified environment to make the internet more attractive and addicting for everyday people. The World Wide Web, on the other hand, isn't owned by anybody. It is a system of media, hyperlinks, and hypertext that anyone can just add to, creating their own little corner of the internet where they make all the rules. This is different from AOL, which would either create or approve the pages that they wanted on their platform. This is great for familiarity, ease of use, and compatibility, as a centralized platform would carefully pick the pages they want in their service. However, it's bad for variety, especially when the World Wide Web's huge, unoccupied real estate was just sitting there. And as people get more used to being online, they are going to get more curious and want to go beyond just what AOL had to offer. And AOL became aware of this. In 1994, the company would make a genius decision. In addition to providing their walled garden platform, their acquisition of a browser called BookLink allowed for them to provide, for the very first time, full access to the World Wide Web. Now users had the best of both worlds. If they were brand new to the internet, they could test the waters with AOL's hand-holding environment, and when they were ready, could then use the new address bar, or even their own browser of choice, to visit any website they wanted to. Obviously, they still needed the AOL service, as that's what provided the phone numbers you dial into in order to get online. But now you weren't stuck with just the AOL program. You could use something like Netscape. But at the same time, what AOL was doing really wasn't all that original either. Competitors like Prodigy, CompuServe, and even the new MSN pretty much all had the same setup. So then why did AOL get most of the glory? The answer is remarkably simple. They had amazing marketing. America Online was very successful at exercising economies of scale, and they picked the perfect time for it as well. In the early 90s, the company took a calculated risk and started giving out chunks of their service for free. Like we just discussed, at the start of the 90s, most everyday people didn't even know what the internet was. So why on earth would they even pay for it? That's why you need to give them the chance to test drive it first. And there were multiple ways of doing this. Many local libraries were starting to provide online support on their computers, with internet cafes doing the same thing with a small fee. But the most efficient and arguably iconic way they did this was through something called the AOL Starter Disk. The company began mass producing these CDs and floppies that contained limited free trials of the AOL service. And they handed these out like candy. You would find them at Blockbuster, bookstores like Borders and Barnes & Noble. You would find them in the mail, even if you didn't order one. People would even find them in cereal boxes. Some of them contained as many as 500 hours of online access. And it was all free. Yes, this approach cost them money, both with the physical production of the disc and the use of their bandwidth, but they believed that getting their name out there and just showing how cool America Online was would increase their number of customers and eventually become profitable. And they were right. Not too long after, AOL then decided to charge a flat monthly fee to its customers of just $19.95, as opposed to charging them by the minute like before. This gave a lot of people more bang for their buck. These bold decisions, along with their exciting non-intimidating brand identity allowed for America Online to explode and really stand out among its competitors. It was just fun. Heck, whenever you got an email, the computer would literally tell you,
"You've got mail."
This soundbite was so iconic, it pretty much became the company's indirect mascot along with the Yellow Running Man. They even named a freaking movie after it. Then in 1997, things would only get better with the launch of AOL Instant Messenger. This was basically a way more refined and even personal version of their already existing chat rooms. Prior to AIM, AOL's chat rooms behaved more like web forums or Usenet news groups, where users selected a topic and often had to refresh the page to see new messages come in. And again, you needed to be an AOL subscriber to use them. AIM allowed you to create private group chats with your friends and have their messages pop up in real time without the need for refreshing. And you didn't need to be a subscriber. It was free. It also included fun colors and sounds whenever a message came in. It was just an exciting environment to be in. Now, competitors like MSN would eventually mirror this approach, even creating their own instant messaging service. And they also saw some success with this, but AOL simply did it first. This gave them a huge head start to become essentially the face of the internet and the World Wide Web by extension. By the year 2000, AOL had over 23 million subscribers in the United States, and even had full service internationally in places like Canada and the UK. Was their presence as strong outside the US? No, but it certainly was there. And the company was now incredibly wealthy. In fact, it was too wealthy? Little did they know that their surplus in capital would actually contribute to their eventual downfall. At the turn of the millennium, the dot-com bubble was forming. I've talked about the dot-com bubble in the past on my channel, but in short, it caused many of these new online goods and services to have incredibly inflated market values. In other words, people thought they were worth way more than they actually were, and AOL was no exception. These investors poured so much money into the company that AOL could now afford to buy Time Warner Cable, and so they did it for $182 billion. It was the largest acquisition in history at that time. There were a couple reasons they did this. One, it would give them access to a ton of Time Warner's content, allowing AOL to have a way more diverse online presence than they already did. And two, arguably the biggest component was a growing technology called broadband. Instead of phone lines, broadband used coax, the same cable that gives you access to cable TV, hence the name. Coax was also much more powerful than the phone line and provided a lot more bandwidth at a much cheaper cost. The internet was about to get so much faster, and AOL wanted Time Warner's infrastructure so that they could easily switch over. The entire merger was a very public spectacle, but then not long after, the dot-com bubble bursts. A bunch of online companies deflate in value. Investors start to panic sell, which makes matters even worse. And so the digital world takes a nosedive. In 2002 alone, AOL lost $98 billion. To add insult to injury, there were also a lot of creative differences between the two companies. Even though they merged, they were often still doing their own individual operations and not really collaborating with each other. This is because AOL was much more free-spirited and willing to take a big risk, as you could probably guess by now. Whereas Time Warner was much more conservative and apprehensive to making these changes. They preferred to just keep doing the things that they knew worked. This allowed for very little to get done, and that included migrating over to broadband technology. As the 2000s came along, dial-up was now incredibly outdated, and AOL took its sweet time adapting to it. A lot of customers then switched to new providers for this exact reason, which made them lose even more money. By 2009, AOL and Time Warner split up once again, and in 2015, Verizon would purchase AOL for $4.4 billion, a big contrast to the $165 billion value the company had in 2000. Today, AOL exists as more of a legacy service, for lack of a better term. It primarily makes money through their veteran users that are in too deep to switch, even providing them services that give them more reason not to. Even I had an AOL email until like 2013. And I am not old. That goes to show how much that kept them afloat. And of course, advertising on their webpage makes them money. As of 2021, AOL is now owned by Apollo Global Management, which bought them for slightly more, at $5 billion. With AOL now operating as a subsidiary company, it actually now has much less risk of going under, because it has all the financial support of a much larger company that makes most of its revenue through other means. And so, America Online now exists as a living artifact, a valuable lesson in the book of cyber history. The company got too confident with its decision-making, thanks to its inflated market value, and its technological stagnation in the world's ambition to advance in the new millennium kept them behind, frozen in time as an icon of the way we were. When did you first start using AOL? What was your favorite thing to do on there? Let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to check out my video about the .com bubble, you can find that right here. A special thanks to my Patreon supporters, patreon.com/nationsquid. You can always buy me a coffee as well. Thank you for watching, everyone.
Don't forget to check out my link at War Thunder to sign up and get a free bonus pack today.